Greetings, everybody. I'm sorry that we can't do this in person. As I told you before, this is my ski week, and normally I do this. I do hold a Zoom during our ski week. In the past, I've done that, but I reached out to Kelly, and we made some family plans, and we made some family plans, and Kelly said it would be fine if we would do this, if I did this asynchronously. So I appreciate you going into Canvas and grabbing this video. I think this is an important session and one that is, close to my heart around a safe and effective learning environment for our students. So with that, I am going to share my screen and we'll get going. This is not going to take a whole long time in terms of my direct instruction here. There is a final, if you will. We talked about that last session, what that's all about, but we'll go into that again in more detail today in this video. And then you have until the last class, until a little before midnight, like 11:59 p.m. to submit it. So for cohort 2, that'll be on Tuesday, February 18th. And for cohort 1, that'll be Thursday, February 20th. Okay. But of course, you have access to this video. You're watching this video maybe before your session. So I'm hoping that gives you plenty of time, but we'll go into that in a little more detail later. So let me get into our slide deck. And of course, feel free to open the slides yourself and follow along here so you have it, for yourself. Okay. All right. So as I said, our 5th session, our final session, and the one I really want to leave you with is thinking about what a safe and effective learning environment is for our students, and does it really matter? And I think the answer obviously is, of course it matters. It matters so much, that learning environment. Without an environment where students feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally, the learning can't happen the way it needs to. So let's take a look at our agenda. We'll go over our learning objectives, and then I want to jump right in with some key components. I've got 10 here, key components of a safe and effective learning environment. Certainly there are more than 10, but I think that these 10 are good umbrella components that pull in a lot of things when we're talking about a safe and effective learning environment. And then I have a couple of things I want to just put out there for you to think about. I just want to share with you a short essay by Robert Fulghum. He's the one who wrote that Giants, Wizards, and Dwarfs that I read to you a couple of sessions ago. This one's called Credo, and it really does talk about the kind of environment that we create in a school and how important that is to the bigger world. Then I want to talk about the meaning of a warm demander, and I have a video to share with you that really kind of highlights what that is. And then I want to leave you with an essay from Jennifer Gonzalez from Cult of Pedagogy, who wrote an essay called Find Your Marigold. Okay. And then I'll go over the final assessment that is due in Canvas by our last class. Okay. And then I would invite you, and please do this, fill out the course survey for this class for Framework 111. You'll find the link in this slide deck. So if you have your slide deck up, you can click on the link, or you will find it in your Canvas account. So in the modules, the last of the modules, so you can find the link there. It's really important to us. It's really important to me personally and to the program at large to get your feedback. It helps me know what works. It helps me know if there are things I need to do differently going forward. So please give us your feedback. We absolutely read it. So thank you ahead of time for that. So our learning objectives tonight or today, wherever you're, whenever you're watching this, to understand those 10 key components that go into creating a safe and effective learning environment, to reflect on what it is to be a warm demander and how that impacts classroom management. Because ultimately, when we're talking about a safe and effective learning environment, a lot of that is classroom management. And then we'll engage, and that's what you'll be doing on your own, in a self-assessment using the California Teacher Performance Expectations. So there's a document for you that will guide you through that, and that we'll go into that in more detail. And as part of that self-assessment, you're going to be reflecting on it. There are some reflection questions. And again, I'll show you what those look like, when we get there. And you will be, as part of that whole process, identifying personal learning goals to advance your use of the TPEs, your knowledge of the TPEs. And remember, really, this course was one of your first courses in your journey with the Be a Teacher program. And we really are doing just a high flyover of the teacher performance expectations. So, and as I said earlier in a previous session, I haven't even included our new teacher performance expectation TPE 7, which is around literacy. We're not even dealing with that in this class right now. The next cohort next year will have an extra column in their Padlet, column 7, and we will address a TPE 7, but it's brand new. And I just made the kind of command decision that this time I wanted you to know that it exists, but we weren't going to go into it in any kind of way this year. But you will next year, absolutely, in the program. All right, so let's kind of go right into our 10 key components of a safe and effective learning environment. So first, and I think I like that this is number one, building positive relationships with your students. And how do you do that? With open communication, with being genuinely and authentically interested in who they are as human beings, and being genuinely concerned about their well-being. All right, so building those relationships. And I would also say building relationships between students as well, because the teacher can have a fantastic relationship with each student, but if the students don't feel connections with each other, that makes it problematic, and students might not feel, they wouldn't feel comfortable and willing to take the risks that you really need to be able to feel like you can take, and making mistakes, things like that in a classroom. So those positive relationships are really important, and we've gone over some ways to build those relationships. One of them is to do an about me slide, like we did kind of an introduction slide, as I had you do in session 1. Or when we did the session that I did, that a lot of you attended for the permit holders, and we talked about students being able to dedicate a class to someone. And so it basically allows students to get to know about each other. Okay, so that's a way of building kind of community and those strong relationships, not just with teacher student, but between students as well. All right, number 2, clear expectations and boundaries, right? So having clear rules, clear expectations, clear guidelines. So this is really, classroom management with consistent enforcement and clear consequences. This is so important. And it's not that you're being a big disciplinarian or punitive, but students feel comfortable when they know that they're safe, and they know that there are guidelines, they know what to expect, and that if something happens, if somebody gets out of line, there will be something done about it in a consistent way. Okay, so clear consequences that are connected to behavior, so that the consequence makes sense, that it's relevant to the behavior. So I know you'll have courses around this, classroom management. 220, curriculum 220 next year will focus exclusively on classroom management. So that will help you, again, in this creating a safe and effective learning environment. Physical comfort. I think sometimes we forget about this. So maintaining an organized classroom, that it's not, you don't have piles of things around. You have appropriate lighting. It's not too bright. It's not too dim. The temperature, it's not too hot. It's not too cold. And the seating arrangements minimizes distractions, right? So if you've got students who are highly distracted, you're not, maybe sitting them right by a window or right by the class pet or whatever it might be. But just kind of keeping an eye on that physical environment. I understand, of course, there are certain things that just you can't control. I know some schools have the temperature set and you can't do much about it and can't control it. But as much as we can control, and just keeping, an thought around making it as comfortable for you and your students as possible. Psychological safety, of course, is creating an environment where students feel comfortable expressing opinions, asking questions, taking risks without fear of judgment. And, that all goes into that psychological safety is really supported by those positive relationships. Inclusive practices, really being thoughtful about how you welcome diverse backgrounds and learning styles, making sure that all students feel included, doing things that bring all students in, allowing students to share. There's lots of different ways to do these sort of inclusive practices, lots of ideas out there. So I invite you to just, take a look as you go forward. And depends also on who is in your classroom at any given year or any given period, and how are you going to actively welcome those students. Okay. Open communication channels help create a safe and effective learning environment that encourages students to voice concerns and provide avenues for constructive feedback. So the communication, the students feel comfortable that they can come to you and voice concerns, that the communication is a two-way street. And I say that not only for students, but also for parents. Often we focus on our communication outwards, our communication to students, our communication to parents, but it is equally important for students and parents to feel that there's an easy way for them to communicate back to the teacher, okay? So open communication channels, and then positive classroom climate. This is, similar again to that, positive relationships where we're promoting cooperation, respect, and empathy among our students. And as I said earlier, some of those suggestions I have for the slide where they share about themselves, or I'm going to dedicate this class today to, my grandfather who, and then, again, the permit holders, you saw that example, that video that I shared. And if you're curious and you weren't in that permit holder class and you want to know more about that, you can reach out to me and I can send you the link so you could take a look. All right, some more, we've got 3 more here. So active intervention, not letting things in any way fester, promptly addressing bullying, promptly addressing conflicts or disruptive behavior in your class to maintain a safe learning environment. And if you have clear expectations and you have that all set up, you should, doing this promptly, active intervention should be a piece of that, right? And using restorative conversations. If a student has to be removed from the class in some way, that you have a restorative conversation before that student re-enters, and that you give the student a chance to reflect on what didn't go well, and also to let the student know that it's a new day, that whatever happened, once we have this conversation, then it's good, we're good. that they don't feel like this is going to be whatever they did, a mistake they made isn't going to be held over their heads for the rest of the year, right? So just a wiping the slate clean once you have a restorative conversation. And there's some really great guidelines around restorative conversation, and I'm going to assume that you'll have some of that also in your curriculum 220 class with your classroom management and behavior, talking about restorative practices. Student agency is important, right? Empowering students to take ownership of their learning, participate in decision-making processes. And this is, when we talk about universal design for learning, which you will talk about and learn more about as you go through the Be a Teacher program, this really helps with empowering students, where students see themselves as the learner and themselves in driving driving the car or sailing their ship, right? That they are important in the decision-making process in their learning, okay? And then last is collaborations with parents and guardians, maintaining that open communication with families. We talked in session 3 about making phone calls. In one of the cohorts, we talked about making phone calls home and just saying positive phone calls home, calling home before there's any kind of problem, or not even before, there might never be a problem, but just reaching out to a parent saying, what a great kid you have, and thank you for sharing that kiddo with me. And again, it needs to be an authentic call, but something that you find special about that student, something that you appreciate about that student, goes a long way. So and also having that parent feel that the communication is easily two-way, that while you're communicating to the parent easily can communicate back with you, and that you will respond to them in a timely manner. And we've talked a little bit before, what does that mean? And the importance of communicating what that means to the parents. For you, it might mean, 24 hours, it might mean 48 hours, it might mean during your prep, whatever it is, be clear with the parents so that they understand what your boundaries are around that communication when you'll communicate back to a parent, but ensure them that you will absolutely get back and to them. And speaking as a parent, obviously I'm a teacher, but I'm also a parent. And there's nothing more frustrating to me than when I reach out to a teacher as a parent and I don't receive a response back. That is not professional. So I know you all will make sure that you are communicating back to parents, and potentially you may need to get your administrator involved if it's a sticky one, but you always want to be have an open communication, two-way street with parents. All right. So those are our sort of our 10 really important components for a safe and effective learning environment. And I'm sure none of these 10 are surprising, right? And as I said, I'm sure we could find more than 10, but these really do kind of cover a broad range of things that make an environment in the classroom a positive one for both the teacher and the students, right? All right. So this isn't directly related to your classroom and the environment of a classroom, but it is around the environment of a school. And I just wanted to share this with you. So I'm going to click on this, and this is in your session material. So if you want to share this, feel free. So it's called Credo. Each spring for many years, I've set myself the task of writing a personal statement of belief, a credo. When I was younger, the statement ran for many pages, trying to cover every base with no loose ends. It sounded like a Supreme Court brief, as if words could resolve all conflicts about the meaning of existence. The credo's grown shorter in recent years, sometimes cynical, sometimes comical, and sometimes bland, but I keep working at it. Recently, I set out to get the statement of personal belief down to one page in simple terms, fully understanding the naive idealism that implied. The inspiration for brevity came to me at a gasoline station. I managed to fill my old car's tank with super deluxe high octane go juice. My old hoopty couldn't handle it and got the willies, kept sputtering out at intersections and belching going downhill. I understood. My mind and my spirit get like that from time to time. Too much high content information, and I get the existential willies. I keep sputtering out at intersections where life choices must be made, and I either know too much or not enough. The examined life is no picnic. I realized then that I already know most of what's necessary to live a meaningful life, that it isn't all that complicated. I know it and have known it for a long, long time. Living it, well, that's another matter, yes? Here's my credo. All I really need to know about how to live and what to do and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. Wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but there in the sand pile at Sunday school. These are the things I learned. Share everything. Play fair. Don't hit people. Put things back where you found them. Clean up your own mess. Don't take things that aren't yours. Say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush. Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some and think some and draw and paint and sing and dance and play and work every day some. Take a nap every afternoon. When you go out into the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. Wonder. Remember the little seed in the styrofoam cup? The roots go down and the plant goes up, and nobody really knows how or why. But we are all like that. Goldfish and hamsters and white mice, and even the little seed in the styrofoam cup, they all die. So do we. And then remember the Dick and Jane books and the first word you learned, the biggest word of all? Look. Everything you need to know is in there somewhere. The golden rule and love and basic sanitation, ecology and politics and equality and sane living. Take any one of those items and extrapolate it into sophisticated adult terms and apply it to your family life or your work or your government or your world, and it holds true and clear and firm. Think what a better world it would be if we all, the whole world, had cookies and milk about 3 o'clock every afternoon and then lay down with our blankies for a nap. Or if all governments had as a basic policy to always put things back where they found them and to clean up their own mess. And it is still true, no matter how old you are, when you go out into the world, it is best to hold hands and stick together. All right. So I just think that's really sweet. And it goes to this idea to me that what we're teaching in school, what we're doing in school has such huge implications, right? We are building the citizens of tomorrow, whether we're doing it in TK or we're doing it in 12th grade or adult education. So we have a huge task ahead of us. It is so important. And in getting to know you all, I feel so fortunate that, you all have, and so I don't know, just proud that so many of you have decided to be a part of this profession. All right, I'm going to get in here now. So I want to talk a little bit about what a warm demander is. I think a couple of you have heard me use that term before, and I really like it. I think I certainly didn't, I did not invent it. I don't know who did, but to me, it really encapsulates, I think, what it means to be an to be an effective instructor, that we are demanding. We have high expectations, but we do it with a warmth and a support that students want to, they want to meet those expectations, all right? So there's some sort of qualities of a warm demander. What makes a warm demander, or how do we be a warm demander? So a warm demander uses a supportive tone of voice. They listen to students and take them seriously. A warm demander appreciates the uniqueness of individual students. So in other words, we get to know our students so that we can appreciate the uniqueness, right? The warm demander doesn't embarrass a student. A warm demander shows a positive attitude and a sense of humor and interest in and respect for students' outside interests. So that goes to this appreciating the uniqueness. Get to know what your kiddo does outside of school. What do they love? What are they passionate about? Who are they outside of the classroom? A warm demander involves students in making decisions about the class and the curriculum. Allows the students that agency, that choice and voice, right? And again, with your high expectations, you maintain those, but you allow the student to decide how they want to meet those expectations in some cases. A warm demander looks for improvements in student work and behavior, not perfection. Improvement, not perfection. All right. We meet students where they are and we move them forward from that. And of course, students are all over the place, right? They are unique, and if you've got 30 students, chances are they're in 30 different places. So we're looking for student improvement. And a warm demander expresses warmth through smiling, touch, warm or firm tone of voice, and good-natured teasing. And I put a little asterisk because not until you know the student well and have an established rapport with the student should you be touching them, because for some students that's really, they don't want to be touched. So you have to know that it's okay to, you can put your hand on their shoulder or on their arm, and so be aware of students' comfort as well as the teasing thing. You have to get to know students well before you can tease them, right? Some students, just that teasing isn't going to land. So you have to know your students again. All right. So I have here an example. I love Rita Pearson, and she's no longer with us, but what an amazing educator she was. And I have this video, and I'm going to play it and keep this list of a warm demander up on the screen. As she tells this story about how she handled a couple of students, she, to me, just really illustrates this idea of being a warm demander. You won't hear her use the terminology, but when I saw this video, I thought, here it is in real life. Okay, so let's take a look at this.
I can remember an occasion when two of my students were fighting at school. I mean, they were going at it on the playground. And at the elementary level, children who are fighting have a tendency to get really angry at each other. And if they're little boys, they puff up, because that means you're really tough. And so they were all puffed up, And when I got them to the office, I asked them a terrible question. I said, "What happened?" Well, they really huffed up then. And that's really probably the worst question you could ask, because when you ask what happens, you're never going to get an accurate story. And so I said, "Okay, you go first." Well, the story gets very loud. I don't know why, but when kids are explaining, the story is loud. You may have noticed that. So I said, "Okay, Jack, what happened?" He said, "Well, say, yeah, everybody was playing." It's important to include everyone so you're not in trouble by yourself. And he said, "We was kicking." Everybody was kicking. And then he kicked my cousin. And my mama said, I said, "Stop right there." because I knew we were getting into a hidden rule, the mama rule. You see, there's mama law and there's public law. No law overrides mama law. Did you know that? If you didn't know, that's a hidden rule you must remember. When your mama says it, it becomes engraved in stone. So I knew what he was going to tell me. I said, your mama said if somebody hits you, hit him back, right? And he said, right. And my mama said if somebody mess with anybody in my family. I said, okay, I know the rules. Stop right there. So I asked him, I said, where's your mama work? And he forgot he was supposed to be huffed up. And he said, at the telephone company. And I asked the other little boy where his mom worked. And he said, at Prudential. He was still puffed up. And I said, okay, your mom works at the telephone company. Your mom works at Prudential. Did your mom say you could fight telephone company? Yes, ma'am. She said, bust them up. And I said, did your mom say you could fight? Yes, ma'am. She told me to defend myself. I said, all right, we got the rules straight. And they said, are we suspended? I said, absolutely, because that's my rule. If you fight at school, you get to go home for 2 days. Well, they were pretty upset with me by this time. I said, but we have to do some things first. He said, what do we have to do? I said, well, first, we're going to go to the telephone company. And their eyes got real big because one of the hidden rules about working is that you don't bother your parents on their job. And he said, are you going to call our mama? I said, no, I'm going to take you over there. He said, oh, no, by this time the huff and puff was gone out of both of them. I said, this is how it's going to work. First, we're going to the telephone company, and we're going to fight at the telephone company. I want you to tear up the telephone company, roll on the floor, kung fu kick, just like you were doing here. But don't hurt each other too badly because we're going to leave the telephone company and we're going over to Prudential. We're going to fight at Prudential. You can really fight over there. That's the last time. You can make blood, pull hair, snatch each other's clothes off. I can run you by the hospital, get anything broken, set in a cab, push your eyeball back in your head. Then you can begin serving your 2-day suspension. They said, Miss Pearson, you know we can't fight in our mama's job. I said, why not? Your mama made the rule. Let's go where your mama is. They said, oh, we're dead. We're not going to make it. And they just fought. I said, go sit on the blue seats outside my office while I call your parents. Tell them we're on our way. Get some boxing strategy in place so you'll know how you're going to fight once we get there. Oh, they were so sad. They just drug out of there. Well, first of all, I wasn't going to take those kids to their parents. But it was the first time I used a strategy that I've never used before, but I've used a lot since, and it has never failed me. When I called each parent, what I said was, I respect the rules you make for your children at home. You see, there's been a misconception that people who have children don't always make the right decisions about their kids. You see, parents make decisions for their children based on what they know, what they feel will make them safe. And it is not our place to say what they do is wrong. It's our place to say maybe we can add a set of rules that they don't know about. So I began both conversations by saying how much I respected their decisions that they were making for their children and would they help me. I said, I know you made rules for home and I promise not to interfere with those, but I need some help. I have 1,200 children in this building and I have to keep all of them safe. And if everybody fought because their mom said they could, all the children here would be in trouble or hurt. Will you help me? I've never had a parent to tell me no. And I believe it's because I preface it by saying, I respect the rules you've made. And what I give the kids, in addition to their parents, is an opportunity to develop a second set of rules. Many times, to explain this point even further, I've asked parents, would you go on your job and punch a coworker because they disagreed with you? And of course, most of them said, no way. And I asked why, and they said, we'd lose our jobs. And I said, and I want kids to understand that the same concepts apply on their job, which is school. So we need to learn different ways of handling conflict because fighting is not always an option. Two sets of rules, one set of rules for home, another set of rules for school.
Right. And I love the way, she's fantastic. And I think as she was dealing with those students, she was taking them seriously and giving, allowing them to talk and tell their stories. She has this sense of humor and a positive attitude. And she ultimately, has a way of reaching out to parents that make them feel validated too. So I think it was she's, like I said, she was a fantastic educator and administrator. She was, obviously in an administrative role when she was uh, telling that story. She was dealing with those students. So I want to switch gears here a little bit, and I want to share something with you. That is not one. There we go. I often wait and do this I share this in my English learner strategy class, not because it has anything to do with English learner strategies, but because of where often the candidates are, the interns, I should say, where they are in the program at the time. They're halfway through their first year, and this sort of resonates with them, this essay. But I also, a lot of you are really, in looking at what you're up, looking at your candidate information sheets. Many of you are in the schools already. You're working closely with teachers. You might be the teacher already on a permit. A lot of you are permit holders. So I thought this would be a good time to share this with you. It's called Find Your Marigold. And I think in this day and age of, things are tough right now in education in a lot of ways. And I believe so much in surrounding yourselves with positive people, positive educators, people who know what a challenging job it is, who aren't Pollyannish about what we're doing, but love what they're doing and understand how important it is. So let me share this with you. I'm going to read it aloud. And again, this is the link to this is in your source, the session sources, resources, and of course, as the slide deck. So Find Your Marigold, one essential rule for new teachers. Welcome to your first year of teaching. This year will test you more intensely than just about anything you've done up to now. It will deplete all your energy, bring you to tears, and make you question every talent or skill you thought you had. But all these tests, if you approach them the right way, will leave you better and stronger than you are today. Advice is available everywhere you look, and some of it's very good. Still, with everything you have to do right now, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the sheer volume of it all. And the fact is, a lot of those tips won't work very well if you fail to follow this one essential rule. Surround yourself with good people. By finding the positive, supportive, energetic teachers in your school and sticking close to them, you can improve your job satisfaction more than with any other strategy. And your chances of excelling in this field will skyrocket. Just like a young seedling growing in a garden, thriving in your first year depends largely on who you plant yourself next to. The marigold effect. Many experienced gardeners follow a concept called companion planting, placing certain vegetables and plants near each other to improve growth for one or both plants. For example, rose growers plant garlic near their roses because it repels bugs and prevents fungal diseases. Among companion plants, the marigold is one of the best. It protects a wide variety of plants from pests and harmful weeds. If you plant a marigold beside most any garden vegetable, that vegetable will grow big and strong and healthy, protected and encouraged by its marigold. Marigolds exist in our schools as well, encouraging, supporting, and nurturing growing teachers on their way to maturity. If you can find at least one marigold in your school and stay close to them, you will grow. Find more than one, and you will positively thrive. Few teachers will be lucky enough to be planted close to a marigold. Being assigned to one as a mentor, co-teacher, or team leader will be rare. You will have to seek them out. You can identify them by the way they congratulate you on arrival, rather than asking why anyone would want this godforsaken job. Or by the way their offers to help sound sincere. Or just by how you feel when you're with them. Are you calmer, more hopeful, excited to get started on a teaching task? Comfortable asking questions, even the stupid ones? If you feel good around this person, chances are they have marigold qualities. Once you've identified your marigolds, make an effort to spend time with them. Having a hard day? Go to your marigolds. Not understanding how to operate the grade reporting system? Go to your marigolds. Confused by something the principal said at the faculty meeting? Marigolds. They may be on the other side of the building or out of your grade or subject area, or otherwise less convenient to reach than others. If your school is especially toxic, you might have to find your marigolds in another school or even online. Make the effort. It's worth the trouble. Beware the walnut trees. While seeking out your marigolds, you'll need to take note of the walnut trees. Successful gardeners avoid planting vegetables anywhere near walnut trees, which give off a toxic substance that can inhibit growth, wilt, and ultimately kill nearby vegetable plants. And sadly, if your school is like most, walnut trees will be abundant. They may not seem dangerous at first. In fact, some may appear to be good teachers, happy, social, well-organized. But here are some signs that you should keep your distance. Their take on kids is negative. Their take on the administration is negative. Being around them makes you feel insecure, discouraged, overwhelmed, or embarrassed. Walnut trees are poison. Avoid them whenever you can. If you don't, they will start to infect you, and soon you'll hate teaching as much as they do. Doing this may be a challenge. Your supervisor might be a walnut tree. You may be co-teaching with one. You might work on a whole team of walnut trees, spending hours with them every week. Touching base with your marigolds will help flush out the toxins that build up from contact with the walnut trees. On top of that, simply identifying certain co-workers as walnut trees can help dilute their power over you. If I'd had a label I could mentally place on certain people in the schools where I worked, they would have had far less of an impact on me. So in the spirit of identification, here are some common walnut tree varieties to look out for. Kid hating Kate, who will snort every time you share a positive anecdote about your students. Spend enough time with her and you'll believe every single one of them is a lying, cheating little sneak, and you're a fool if you think otherwise. Retirement Dan, who regularly reports on how many years he has left before he's out of here. Then he adds with a chuckle that you have about 30, right? Dan will find your enthusiasm about school cute, but will then tell you, just wait, it'll wear off. 20-page Tina, who sets impossibly high standards for her students and brags when kids fail. You had your kids write a 5-page paper? Tina assigned 20. Your midterm had 50 questions? Tina had 150 and only a dozen kids passed it. The students say her exams are the only ones they ever have to study for. After talking to Tina, you'll feel the urge to triple your kids' workload and add at least 10 trick questions to your assessments just to get your average down. Badass Bobby, who overhears you talking about your students acting up in class and says, they would never try that crap in my room. Wherever you leave, or excuse me, whenever you leave a conversation with him, you go and scream at your kids. Hattie, who hates the principal. Self-explanatory. Lawsuit Steve, who sees you touch a student's forearm and says, you better watch out. He had to give up hugs years ago and is always reminding you to be careful. My Time Margaret, who counts the number of minutes she got for lunch, complains about serving one more day of car rider duty than anybody else, and knows precisely what time she's legally required to be in the building each day, not a minute earlier. And good old days Judy, who hates anything new and never fails to mention how much better things used to be. Be especially vigilant during PDs when you'll find yourself in a veritable forest of walnut trees. It will be the worst when the presenter asks you to perform some task, read student work, for example, in groups. The trees will slowly turn toward the center, leaves rustling, snarky comments dropping off their branches like walnuts whacking the table. It won't matter how potentially interesting the activity might be. As soon as they huddle up, it will be snark, snark, ugly, ugly, hate, hate. When this happens, recognize that you're surrounded, hold tight to your roots, and remember your marigolds. Get what you can where you can. Your search for marigolds will yield imperfect results. Not everyone is all marigold or all walnut tree. There will be some in the building who just make you happy. Go to them for a mood boost. Some who aren't terribly good at the teaching part, but love the kids to death. Seek them out when you need to be reminded how much you love them too. Others will take care of you, encourage you to rest, slack off a little, not beat yourself up. And some who are intensely into the craft, who always have a great strategy on hand and keep up on current research, they can really help you stretch your abilities. Learn who has what marigold qualities and get what you can from each of them. Finally, try to find some compassion for the walnut trees. Their toxicity comes from a place of real pain, and they themselves probably fell under the influence of the walnut trees who came before them. Plus, it's not like their complaints have no basis in reality. Teaching is a ridiculously hard job. Some say almost impossible, like climbing Mount Everest, if you'll allow one last metaphor. Still, you're aware of the difficulty, and though many before you failed, you have accepted the challenge. Before you climb that peak, you'll need to choose a Sherpa to escort you through the trek. The first option is Walter Nutt, who starts by asking why in the world you'd want to do something like this. He describes the many others who've died trying to do this climb, how sick you'll get, how people have polluted the trail, all but destroying what was once a pristine and beautiful mountain. The second option, Mary Gold, congratulates you on your courage, sits down with you to map out some important strategies, and finishes off by saying, it's a crazy hard, mammoth task, but you know what? You're going to kick that mountain's ass. Who do you want leading you up that peak? Find your marigolds and stick close to them. Grow big and strong and kick that mountain's ass. All right. So thank you for bearing with me on that one. I just think it really is important, and you've got this. If you need to pull it out once in a while and reread it, please do that. Share it with colleagues, because I think it really is important. And I was, as I'm reading it, I was thinking about, session 3 where we're talking about labels and things like that. And here, Jennifer Gonzalez is labeling, but really, and with the idea of sort of, I'm not coming up with a word, but just not allowing that energy to influence you in a negative way, right? So it just sort of negates that a little bit, right? Neutralizes it. That's the word I'm looking for. It kind of neutralizes it, right? Okay. So I think we're almost, let me come back here to my slide. Here we go. All right. So we're now to where I want to talk about your final assignment. It's worth 50 points, and it's where you are doing a self-assessment, a reflection, and goal setting. So there's like 3 parts to this, all right? And I will open this document up and look at it with you here so you know what you'll be filling out. You will make a copy of it, all right, and save it. And then you will, when you're done with it, when you've completed it, you upload it into Canvas. And I have, I put these 2 due dates because I know both cohorts are watching this same video. So for cohort 2, who have this class on Tuesday nights, this is due by February 18th before midnight, 11:59 p.m. And for cohort 1 that has the class on Thursday nights, it's due February 20th. Okay? So let me open it up and you can take a look at what it is. All right, so first we have the TPEs. And you're just put an X in what box makes sense. So I have them, this is TPE 1, TPE 2, TPE 3 with each of the elements, okay? And we've already looked over these. You're familiar, you know these things exist, and you know that here are the elements. So let's, for instance, with TPE 1.1, apply knowledge of students, including their prior experiences, interests, and social emotional learning needs, as well as their funds of knowledge and cultural, language, and socioeconomic backgrounds to engage them in learning. Do you feel like you effectively use this skill and knowledge? You feel good about this? Are you learning this? Are you kind of feeling like you're just learning about it? Or do you feel like you have really no knowledge of it? No skill, no knowledge. So you put an X in the appropriate box. Either effectively uses, learning skill, or no skill at all. And you just go through each element doing that for all 6 TPEs. This shouldn't take you a great deal of time, right? You're just, again, this is a self-rating. You're just sort of thinking about where you feel you are in your development. All right. Once you complete that, then you get down into this reflection. And in 5 to 7 sentences or so, I'm not going to count the sentences, but just sort of gives you sort of some guidelines. You're going to respond to the following prompts. Where do you feel your greatest skill or knowledge lies? Is there a universal TPE that you feel particularly comfortable with? Why? What experience have you had previously that makes this area a strength for you? And remember, I'm such a proponent of let's identify our strengths and grow those even more. All right. Then the next prompt is which TPE or TPE elements do you feel are a particular area of growth for you? And why do you think this is the case? How do you see this area of growth affecting a future teaching assignment? And then the third reflection prompt, which universal TPE do you feel is the most important for you to focus on as you go forward in your journey to become a teacher? Why did you choose this TPE, and how do you see it impacting your effectiveness as an instructor? Okay. If you want to give me a TPE and the element, if you feel like it's TPE 2.2, you can be specific like that. Or maybe you just say it's TPE 2. I really feel it's important for me to focus on the environment and, that kind of thing. So you decide how you want to do this. Again, this is really about you all individually, about you and reflecting on where you are as a teacher and where you want to go. All right. This last section is on goal setting. Okay, so based on your universal TPE self-assessment and the reflections, choose 2 TPE elements, TPE and TPE elements that you feel most comfortable with, and 1 TPE element you feel is an important area of growth for you. And then you'll fill in the following chart. Okay, so these, I want you to find 2 areas of strength, the TPE number and the element. Okay. So for example, like TPE 2.3, let's say that's you feel strong in that. So the question, in the next 6 months, what specific actions will you take to make this TPE element even stronger? Okay. Are you going to read a book? Are you going to go to a professional development, go to a PD? Are you going to talk with a colleague? Are you, what might you do? And then how do you envision this TPE element evident in your teaching practice? All right. And then the same prompt, you do one more area strength with a different TPE. So it won't be the same TPE. I just did this example the same year just to show you this is the way that we cite the TPE and the element. So the universal TPE 2.3, the element is 3. Okay, so same prompt for that. And then here's the area for growth. What TPE number and element do you feel is an area of growth for you? And then what specific actions will you take to make this TPE a bit more comfortable for you? How will addressing this area for growth impact your teaching practice? All right, and that's it. And once you fill in, and these boxes are fillable, once you make a copy of it, then you'll put it into the modules. And let me go over here to modules. I'm in our you're seeing cohort 1 Thursday nights, but here is I've expanded this. This is where the document lives. You can access it this way, or you can click from the slides. And then here's where you turn it in. If you open this up, you'll see that, well, mine looks different than yours, but you'll see that you have a place to upload it in there. All right. And then I do want to show you, this is where the end of course survey is. So you should be able to just click on it and then do that survey. And as you will find that we ask that you do an end of course survey for every course throughout the Be a Teacher program. Again, because as we talked about the importance of feedback, of providing students, giving feedback is, well, you'll get that even more so when you're in the program as interns. We talk about the importance of giving feedback. And that enables us to make, to know as instructors what we need to do better, what we need to continue to do, what we're doing well, what could be better, that kind of thing. All right. And it is anonymous. So your names are not connected to your feedback. All right. So I think we're about, let me get to this slide. All right. Yeah. Here's the survey link. And you click on this, you could click here or click here. It'll take you, or you can access it from Canvas. And we, really want that feedback. And then I just want to say what an honor and a pleasure it has been teaching this course to you. You are all going to make amazing teachers, and feel free to reach out. You have my email, cell. I'm here for you. I'm happy to be one of your marigolds, and I look forward to seeing many of you next year as candidates, or as interns, I should say, in the Be a Teacher program. So thank you for hanging out with me here. Reach out if you have any questions, and have a great rest of your year. All right. Good night.